Oh, okay. Now we're live. Awesome. So this is another episode, a very long hiatus-laden episode of the Deep Web podcast, or live from the Deep Web. I forgot the own title of the freaking podcast. Live from the Deep Web podcast, and let's just go ahead and get into what has happened to Deep Web records or Deep Web music and everything else. So, like. The operation where everything was working fine. We were, released an album, and we're starting to release another one, and then it was moving on and on. And then all of a sudden, the landlord of the property that we were renting died. So when she died, she was a really old lady. Then the new landlords took over, which were her children, and it was like a whole new regime. Essentially, it was like a coup. When that happened. And long story short, like they essentially were just going to be selling the property, so we had to leave. So it was all very like, and it was all very boom. We had to go, and so we had to find a place to stay, and like no notice, pretty much. They originally had just tried, like heartlessly, they just tried to give us like a 7-day notice, and so we just fought.
Oh, that's fucked.
Yeah, I know. It was really like, it was very Charles Dickens-ish, to be quite honest. Like, it was a very Charles Dickens affair, It's just, your previous landlord's dead, and I'm the new landlord, and I say you leave,
You
So
got a fucking black lung.
Exactly. So, like, it was a crazy thing, and so we finally found a place, and we're just now moving into it. It took forever, but we fought it in court to keep buying time and everything. And then finally,
That is
yeah, it's crazy. And it's so crazy how it just changed. It was just boom. This is the reality now. It's weird. Everything was kind of very stable and going in one direction, and then all of a sudden it just changed. Luckily I'd lived a crazy life. So I was prepared for such things.
What luck.
Yeah, right. But still, it was crazy. So anyways, I have before me Jonathan Clark, and also known as Persyn, who is doing a kind of a hybridizing, if not I don't know what the word would be. I think you aesthetically are hybridizing, kind of like this goth vaporwave thing, but I think the sound is actually kind of not hybridized at all. It is its own kind of character. I think I would say that, and only because you I think only because you achieve kind of this this beautiful trash thing where you've got you've got a lot of hooks that are on of themselves good. They're aesthetic, they're pretty to the ear and things like that, but then you also pepper it with this kind of ugliness that is palatable. So I really think it's a very fascinating style. And so anyways, introduce you. Here you are. Thank you for doing this finally.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That was an awesome description of my music. It's methamphetamine chic or something. I don't know.
It kind of has that quality to it.
Yeah.
There's sort of a nostalgia to it, but it's not like a performance nostalgia where you're kind of like trying to redo something.
Right. But that's that nostalgia is like one of the big reasons I have such a an affinity for vaporwave, and really witch house too. A lot of and synthwave, all those scenes either hack nostalgia or try to kind of invent, or I don't know, in some way kind of just hack that feeling. And so I've been making this kind of music for a while, and then I found out embarrassingly late about these genres, and it's kind of it became a really good place to start plying my trade. All of a sudden there's a context where that, I don't know, you can have some sort of word for it, which is helpful.
No, I understand what you say. So you started doing these genres as your first foray into production. Is that what you're saying?
These genres?
Yeah.
No, I've been making music for years, and then a lot of it was not really for people to hear. It was like kind of the thing I do. I'm a big procrastinator, and I'm a big believer in procrastination. But the way I like to do it is I like to have creative projects that I use to kind of cheat on my main creative project, you know? And that's kind of the way and that's the way I procrastinate. I feel like there's so much carryover between the different mediums of
if it's true that you have to constantly siphon off all these creative endeavors into other ones, then you must have gone through a period of production where you made humongous tracks of I don't know, of like Brian Wilson caliber. Is that true?
I used to kind of make like 16-bit style dubstep, like hokey ass, like that like UK sound. I used to make big. I have a friend, James Sloan, who's the Purples on Bandcamp, who makes he's just an incredible guitarist, and we would do kind of like almost like Morrissey, like nice. Pop stuff. I don't know.
That's nice.
You know.
You're the one for me.
Yeah.
In order to do the Morrissey voice, you have to take your bottom jaw. It's got to jut out a little bit. That's the only way. When you see him sing, you see him do that. You're the one for me, fatty. It's not your birthday anymore. Yeah, I actually like Morrissey a whole lot.
Yeah, I like a lot of. Man, I like it, but I do understand the hate. I like so many things that I totally understand why it's bad and like Poison, but that I love. Like, I will stand by the claim that like Miley Cyrus's slam hit #1 single Wrecking Ball is an incredible, like it's like if ISIS made pop songs, that would be it. It's Poison. It's so bad for you as a human being, but as for what it does, it's so good, you know?
Well, I mean, it's actually a well-written song. I mean, it's a very well-crafted, well-produced song with a great hook. I mean, it's an amazing hook. We can't just look at the song is good too, but just the context. I mean, this song is good, but it had just this vehicle of the summer that it came out, and like the music video and the whole moment. It's really good engineering went into the atom bomb. It's really brilliant engineering. It's bad for us. I think it's great. I think it's amazing. I really do. And I mean, and not to kind of have hints of American Psycho, but I thought it was a great meditation on toxic love. I really liked it. I liked it a lot. I mean, I think everyone can relate to that. I think, don't get me wrong. I've done my stint as a musician that, kept those things away from me for a very long time.
Yeah.
I went through some weird vortex after a while where I really understood what people were doing anymore with things. And I get it. I see the people who make the compromise. And, I think you can have like the Macarena or something like that. Yeah. And that's a real sellout. That's not an artist that's had to pay rent. That's right. But when you look at something like Wrecking Ball, I mean, it's actually a very sentimental very nice, pretty little
Absolutely.
song. And
Yeah, it's
lyric-wise,
really. I also thought I loved the music video was always you know, it was brought on all these TV shows. It's like, oh, how shocking, you know, like you know, she's giving a, you know, she's performing oral sex on a sledgehammer and she's naked and stuff. But, you know, the way I looked at it was that, like, there are really sweet, tender moments in a relationship. And by having the aesthetic of a deconstruction, and of like something as mean and brutal as a sledgehammer, that you are performing the tenderness to, it just so perfectly shows like how vulnerable you are emotionally during a breakup, and how destructive, how much tenderness you still have for that person. You know,
yeah, I mean, I will give you that it's not a deep song. I mean, it's a precocious song. It's the song from the narrative of a precocious young girl.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
it's not deep, but it's wide.
It's, yeah. I mean, I think, like I said, the narrative is a precocious young girl who probably thinks she's a lot wiser than she is. I
Yeah,
mean, to me, that's how I appreciate this song. I appreciate
yeah.
something like that. I don't
But
think
that's can't that it's its own deepness in a way, you know.
I think, you know, I think about Miley Cyrus. I think Miley Cyrus is just, I think she's a victim of just like everybody else in this strange climate right now, and no one knows what to do right now. You know, everyone's trying to. I think Dada and pop art has kind of, we're in this tyranny, under the tyranny of it right now. We're under the tyranny of Warholism. I mean, we really are. I mean,
Yeah.
we are literally under the tyranny of, in my opinion, I know I threw a bunch of names out, but truly, in my opinion, I think we're under the tyranny of Warholism and also of found object art. I think we're being like, you know, ruled by this right now at this point.
Well, you just described vaporwave.
Yeah, I mean, to me, well, I mean, I went through a weird phase or a period with vaporwave. At this point with vaporwave, I think there are people who can make music with it, but I think about 95% of vaporwave is bullshit. Like,
I have this problem. I really I discovered this stuff embarrassingly late, but this, like, when I first started listening to it, I really believed in kind of the political and philosophical and artistic project that I saw at the foundation of vaporwave. But there is this poison inside of vaporwave, which is like, it's non. This is gonna. I don't know how to put it well. It's like they're ironically appropriating this stuff, but in like a deep down, it's non-ironic. It's not actually a critique of consumer capitalism. It's just like a celebration of it, and kind of.
yeah, I understand what you're saying. It's as if Justin Timberlake or Miley Cyrus would get on TV and read "The revolution will not be televised." It's kind of like, that, you know.
Right.
Like, well, this is just something wrong about this. This is not well intended.
Right. Absolutely. And there's just this kind of like where you were not supposed to actually be pining for 80s and 90s mall culture. We're supposed to not actually be be genuinely pining for that stuff, but so much of it just comes off as like just kind of, it's like if you made an album for those BuzzFeed, like, you'll only know this if you're a 90s kid articles, you know? It's like a soundtrack for that shit.
I feel what you're saying. At the same time, though, why shouldn't you? I mean, because it's kind of a reclamation of.
Wait, why shouldn't you what?
Why shouldn't you pine for a mall culture? It's a fascinating, undone thing.
Yeah, I think as a person maybe, but as an artist, as an artist, you either set yourself at war against oppressive regimes and kind of oppressive bases and superstructures, or you are helping create the superstructure that reinforces that oppressive regime. So I feel like the thing that I thought was so exciting about vaporwave, it was the like explicit anti-capitalist message. Once you take that away, it's so fucking boring.
I never got that message from any of it, to be quite honest. I've heard this theory bandied about with vaporwave, and I mean, of course, read it everywhere, but it's strange because I never really have gotten that message from anyone. You know what I mean? From any one vaporwave artist. There's not a track or an album that I can say was really a well-informed political narrative about, you know,
right,
using samples and things like that to defacing them.
Yeah.
And this kind of capitalist graffiti type of thing. I understood when I read it, I was excited about something like that because I thought it was interesting. This conceptual burning of capitalism in effigy. I like that.
Absolutely. That's a good way of putting it.
But I never saw it. I just never saw it. I never saw anybody actually do it. You know what I mean? It's weird. And then when you actually go and look in vaporwave groups, you never really see that talked about.
A bunch of it's just middle class trash. I mean,
that's the Warholian
right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's this very Warhol thing. It's just, hey, look at me. I'm against capitalism. Right. I don't know. I'm just defacing it. Maybe I'm not. It's this very Warholian thing. Don't get me wrong. I appreciated Andy Warhol for his time.
Yeah.
I think that it's one of those things. It's like William S. Burroughs. I don't ever want to read another guy try to do naked lunch. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't even. I'm not even interested. If someone says like, this is the next step in something like in this conceptual art form of naked lunch, I would be like, no, thank you. It's one of those things that can only exist in its time. And
absolutely,
I think it's strange to have. I think it's strange to have such vitriol against capitalism when we're watching essentially non-capitalism be practiced. It's strange. In this modern age, I think we could easily look at the 80s and you could easily criticize the what happened with capitalism and how it failed essentially in the 90s. But after 9/11, can we really say that we exist in a free market capitalist society? I don't know if we do.
I would say, like, I wouldn't consider kind of the fantasy free market as a necessary prerequisite for capitalism. I think of capitalism as just the rule of private property, the rule of capital as it expands, creating creating value through the exploitation of labor. And I wouldn't say that like a free market. When I use the word, I don't really think of a free market totally unrestricted as like necessary. It's certainly what a lot of people who label themselves as capitalists, it's certainly what they're very excited about, or say that they're very excited about. But I'm more interested in that rule of privately owned capital.
I have this feeling that we kind of gradually moved to feudalism a while ago. I mean, seriously, I really do. I think we have moved to this kind of very, and I hate to say this because I don't want to sound like an Illuminati person, because I'm not.
But lizard people run the world.
Exactly. Morrissey's one of them. Jaw jutting out as part of his shape-shifting.
Right, you can tell.
But I've seen that pretty much. I think, in my historical opinion, I think that the project of America, as it was built, was the product of a kind of a underground Freemason revolution of ideas where one class can jump to another class in a generation, essentially. I mean, to really kind of encapsulate it into something small. And I think that that idea has been under fire for a long time, and I think anything else is really irrelevant. Because the whole point is that we've been moving towards this feudal society where classes are locked, and they're becoming a lot more locked as each decade is going on, where it's harder and harder to move and be mobile inside of a society. And to me, I think that after 9/11 happened, and again, I always hate having to say after 9/11 happened. It's so trite. It
was an inside job.
Post 9/11. But I think after 9/11 is when kind of the scaffolding came down a little bit and people saw a little bit of what's been going on. And I don't think it's this group or anything that's really trying to fuck it up, or because they're evil and this is good or anything like that. I really think it's just that the idea came under fire from various things, mainly up your alley of things, mainly from corporatized, privatized markets, but I mean, from fruit to tobacco to every other product that we've kind of capitalized on and exploited. And then I think the drug war and all this other things, I think that's a lot of those is how that idea came under fire, and we moved towards this kind of thing. It's very weird, don't you think? It's weird to see these companies, not all companies, not all corporations, but these certain corporations throughout history that are kind of like, we're going to take over everything. You made a law, but we'll get around it, don't you?
Right.
And we're just like, we'll make a law. It's very strange if you think about it that way, though.
Yeah, the comparison now of corporate power versus state power is pretty interesting. Just like the states are still incredibly powerful. Not to say that they aren't, but just that, especially with trade deals the way they are now, where companies can argue in private tribunals that this law passed in a country that hurts their profits it's not allowed. Now, it might have been passed by referendum by a majority of the people, but that's just too bad. It's not profitable, and that and not only that, but the use of state power in the service of private interests, it's pretty incredible. I mean, just to your point, the fact that there are companies that are I mean, their power would make any Caesar blush.
Oh yeah. I mean,
it's incredible. Yeah.
Even their influence, and that's something to say because of Rome. That was, the downfall of Rome was inside influence. But yeah, I mean, amongst other things, of course. But yeah, I mean, it's strange that is there really a state then, or is the state really the board in which the game is played? Because
I like what Lenin said that bourgeois democracies, or like liberal democracies, they're just organizations that manage the affairs of the ruling class. And it's really, you look at it, they seem like agencies that carry out that carry out services for companies, and they run on money collected from working people.
Yeah, I mean, I think so, but I think there's a lot more data to it. I think first of all, like working people spend more money. I mean, that's kind of the point with that is that, and I don't think it's right to exploit working people. Let me just go ahead and say that first. But they do tend to spend more money. They do tend to spend more in microtransactions, which creates this strange demand in a market for baubles and, and toys and things like that. I mean, to me, I think that it really all boils down to that we've descended from apes, and that's a part of who we are. And I think that to your point, I think that around the after World War II, we've created a whole market system where marketing drove. It was kind of the anima of it all, and they just became better and better at being able to pierce the minds of people to make them buy their product, to the point where we've in our lives, and this is again a credit to your point. This is more of a Marxist type of perspective. Our lives have blended. Our lifestyles have blended with products now.
Right.
It's strange. It's very strange. In the 70s, they started lifestyle marketing. That's where they did the whole, like, you're a surfer and you're this and that, so you need to buy this kind of clothes and this kind of car.
Right.
And you're a mom. So I mean, that's just gotten better.
I love that. Yeah, it's encapsulated in that Madison Avenue thing of, you don't sell people promises of what the product can do. You sell them a fantasy that the product belongs in. Right. And that's so much more powerful.
Oh yeah, because that hacks the brain. It goes right.
Right. It's religious. Brain. It's religious. That's the thing, I think, is that saying like, oh, this shampoo will make your hair shinier, fluffier, and it'll get rid of dandruff. Like, that's all fine. That's kind of why when you tell yourself, or if you had to explain to your buddy why you're buying a shampoo, you would say, well, my hair needs to be shinier, look thicker, and I need to get rid of dandruff. But like the religious, like our need for fetish items and for symbols and for projecting fantasy onto a situation and sharing that fantasy so that we kind of unite around a sort of utopian now. That whole religious experience of being human is so tickled by that new form of advertisement.
Oh yeah, I mean that's what I mean. It's people go to the store to buy a toy because it's the ape brain that wants a toy
right.
Because I mean seriously, the problem, that's the problem kind of with the human frontal lobe, which is the new technology of the human brain, new in the
right.
context of lots of years, but that's the newest addition to the human brain, and the poor thing doesn't have a whole lot of descending or ascending fibers to like the middle brain and other parts, but the middle brain has a shit ton of them born already embedded into it. So you're kind of your emotional your urges and desires and fears and a more emotional side of yourself has a hell of a lot more control over this frontal lobe, this ability to think rationally or to think of things and irrationally. A lot more than that, but more complex reasoning and things like that. And the problem is that we're born disadvantaged because we don't have a lot of these fibers going into to control the other parts or to even have any more sensors into the other parts.
Right.
It's crazy. And this marketing ability has hacked that. It's just gone right past that frontal lobe and right into the amygdala, into the middle part of your brain, and like, bam, you feel fear or whatever. I mean, it's crazy. I haven't watched TV in a long time, but I had to stay with my mom for a week. We were looking for a new place, and she had cable, so I started watching like some TV every once in a while, and like I was just like, damn, they've gotten so good at this.
Yeah.
They've nailed it. They know how to do this.
When you watch, this is a less philosophical tangent, but when you watch cable, because when you don't watch it all the time, when you watch it, terrify you? The fact that there's just so many infinite streams going on all the time. While you're just walking around, there's, somewhere there's just all of this media pouring out. It terrifies me, that kind of total flow. It's as large as any ocean, man. It's huge.
It doesn't particularly terrify me. Because it's pattern based, it eventually loops again and it restarts over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Right.
There's this illusion of being infinite, but it really isn't. It's just the spinning of it is, and it's true. And the problem is that there's a lot of cynicism about who creates what, or who creates demands for what, and things like that. But I still stand strongly in the position that the people still decide. Now, they might have bad perspectives and they might have manipulated perspectives. I'm willing to accept that, but they, in the end, decide so much of the fate of what happens with things like our entertainment, products that are being sold, and things like that. Now, have they been, in my opinion, have they been institutionalized and forced to think certain thoughts and things like that? I think so. I think there's a lot to say about that, and that they've been manipulated so they would. But I think that's a credit to the position, how powerful that position really is of people.
That they would be targeted like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if it makes sense anymore, man. I've been a good little Marxist before in my life, and you kind of think of the people as an agent, a historical agent, but it's very hard for me now to ever get a grasp, ever get to the bottom of something and feel like I really feel like something is cellular and cut off, and like, I definitely think that there are agents in our society that have a certain relationship to power and to ownership. That appears clear to me, for reasons I probably couldn't explain down to the bottom. Like that one lady said, I think it was Bertrand Russell, that it's turtles all the way down, holding up the earth. Yeah. It's one of those problems, huh?
Yeah, madam.
Yeah. And I guess there is kind of a group I could probably stand thinking of as the people, but to me, they have the capacity to be a historic actor and mover and shaper. But I think that every way that they are defined as the people is not in a state of power. So like, they do not have control over the means of production and the material base of society. Therefore, they do not have. They are the consumers of the superstructure, but they don't have direct control over it. And that, a lot of things like cable television is a good example, where a lot of people think television works with whatever gets the most ratings gets to stay on, but that's not true. It's whatever gets the most ratings and people want to buy advertisement for. So if I had a show, where it's just me for 30 minutes every night screaming at the top of my lungs to, throw every motherfucker on Wall Street and in Washington, D.C. in a guillotine. And now, let's go to our commercial break, and it goes to, Coca-Cola. And Coca-Cola's not going to want to buy ad space after that. They don't. That's not exactly an audience that is really ready to buy. So there's like you. I forget who said this, but like, if the product is free, if it's free, you're the product.
Right.
Yeah, and so with television, it's like they're trying to provide advertisers with drooling mouths. They're trying to like fluff up and get people excited and horny to purchase, and then you just throw them to the advertisers. So I guess that's a really long-winded, winding way of saying I don't know if I really think the people like the workers and the poor and the oppressed, I don't know if I feel that they do have any kind of powerful role over that.
Oh, I think they do. I think they do. I grew up poor most of my life, so I can say with a lot of authority that poor people are pretty stupid.
Yeah.
Not all poor people. It's not like that. There's working poor and then there's poor, in my opinion.
Yeah.
There's working poor, and those poor saps are really someone to feel sorry for, because they have it together enough to try to keep their head above water, and when they try, they're in this self-repeating system that keeps them there the whole time.
Yeah. I mean, I reread Capital Volume 1 when I was homeless, so I don't know. I feel like poor people are dumb in this way that's like the things they think about are this stupid stuff in life because that's pressing for them. You know what I mean?
No, I do. I understand what you're saying. I think that once we get into segmented areas of poor, if you're poor because you're a certain race, you're in an institution that doesn't want you to go anywhere, I think you have a lot to say about why you would have lower scores of this or this and that. I think there's real reasons why, and I think there are real victimized reasons. I think they have a case, to say that they were hit from the start, and they had no choice in the matter. I think that when you talk about a lot of poor white people, though, you have a different issue. And I do think because they're a part of a race that's a part of a lot more privilege than another
Yeah.
one. And other ones.
Well, I'll really get on my soapbox now. The one thing about that kind of stuff, that discussion about privilege, a lot of my comrades and people I really respect are involved in that kind of discussion of privilege and microaggressions and.
Oh, I don't subscribe to anything like that.
Yeah, I'm not saying you do. I'm not saying you do, but I do really feel like, like I am a cis, white male. I have a lot of what other people would call privileges in my life, right? But what I feel is like someone not holding my race or my how I read gender-wise, people not holding that against me, I don't think of that as some great privilege. That should just be what everybody has. And I feel like when we use the language of like privilege, a lot of working poor white dudes I know who they should be out there on the front lines as hard as anybody fighting for socialism. They are terrified, or not terrified, they're pissed off by this discussion of privilege, because when they hear that, oh, they have privilege, they hear that like they haven't had to work hard for something, but like they've had to work very hard, and they've been fucked over by the cops, and they've been they've had the short end of the stick, and they really hard, and they haven't gotten very much for it. And I worry about this word privilege. I really do. I know that like that's just part of the discourse, and that's kind of like what we say, and when we mean that certain thing. But I really feel like it shouldn't be thought of as a privilege. It should be thought of as just like, that's just how we treat people, is we don't hold their race against them. We don't hold their genitals against them.
Well, ideally, yeah.
Right. Ideally.
I don't subscribe to the bajorning ideology that's starting to kind of be birthed right now. it doesn't mean that I think it doesn't mean that I can't recognize there are inequalities and yada yada yada. I mean, I really
Right.
can.
Yeah.
But at the same time, no, I don't like where things are going in the sense where they're starting to solidify as an ideology right now. I don't. I think, like I said before, I think there are poor and then there are working poor, and then with each one there's segments. I think very much like a sociologist would in that sense. You have these segments of people that are influenced by these factors, and then you have these people that are influenced by these factors.
Right.
And I think when you're talking about, again, when you're talking about working poor people, these are people who, regardless of their circumstances, these people are people who are trying to keep their head above water, and they're caught in a system that is essentially interested in keeping them in the place where they are. And I think there's different motivations for that. I think there can be, in certain situations, racial ones, and I think there can be just general ones where they make more money with you paddling above water instead of you getting above. They don't get as much of a share then. They get to microtransact you every time you're paddling, which this is kind of the system that I see. And I mean, the same reason why there's check cashing places everywhere in poor parts of town. it's that type of thinking, it's that type of predatorial thinking of, well, I mean, you're going to be doing this anyways, so you might as well be paddling towards me and giving me some money.
Right.
But I do think you also have this other kind. You get these people that are they're a piece of shit. It's the truth. This is where you get the sexual. This is where you get the sexual abuse. Found in that class. This is where you get the rampant drug abuse from that. The violence, domestic violence, things like that. You get that from that segment mainly. It's not that you can't find it everywhere, because you can, but obviously it doesn't happen as often.
Is that obvious?
What? It's obvious.
Is it? I don't know if it's obvious that sexual abuse and domestic violence happens more often in poorer.
Well, in my this is of course my opinion. It's anecdotal, so there's nothing I could really offer as a debate item.
Yeah.
I don't have any real data on that. It's mainly in my anecdotal experience. I went homeless for 2 years on purpose, just to watch a man die. But I went around a lot of places, a lot of states around the country, and I had this whole Kerouacian, fantasy at one time.
Yeah.
And tried to do this on the road thing, and I don't think anyone's ever said Kerouacian before. Like, but anyways, and so for me, I mean, I met a lot of people from a lot of classes, and I mean, don't get me wrong. In my anecdotal experience of the middle class, the lower middle class, the upper middle class, and the high class, there's a lot to be said that isn't nice either about those two, especially the lower middle class. Those people tend to be like the most like defensive in keeping their position,
right,
and unempathetic,
right,
about anything else.
The real fascists or
yeah,
lower middle class, yeah,
because they're kept in a place where they have pleasure, but their carrot is right there in front of them all the time.
Right.
Greater. You know what I
mean? They're besieged at both ends.
Yeah. You get the upper middle class, they're happy. You know what I mean? They're happy because they usually see that to take the step up is a lot more trouble than it's worth.
Right.
And so they're kind of in stasis, and they're happy in that stasis. But yeah, it's that lower middle class, man. Those are the ones that are all, it's this. It's yeah. it's the truth. But yeah, so how long have you been a Marxist, I guess you can say?
I radicalized pretty early. I radicalized around about a year after the election of Kerry Bush. I read the manifesto and kind of started reading down that. And I wasn't really a committed Marxist for a while, but I read a lot of radical literature and then became so. Worked a little bit in the movement and stuff, and then I kind of did hitchhiking and traveling, and kind of became disengaged politically because I felt like I was at a point where I had a lot of easy answers for things, and like I had a lot of narratives built up in my mind that were like set. And I just wanted to, like, if I came back to it, I would, if it made sense. But I just kind of disengaged for a few years, and then it's about, more seriously, about 5 years ago, I started reading Marx pretty seriously, like reading Capital, and then reading. I really got into critical theory and like the Western Marxism, like Marcuse, all those people, and Deluise and Guattari and Benjamin and Frederick Jameson, and anyways, blah, 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 all that stuff. And then I would say I mean I am a Marxist in the sense that, for all intents and purposes, what that means, I would say I'm a Marxist. But I went so far down the critical theory rabbit hole that I feel like I don't. If I really have to defend, what I am, or like I start actually really thinking about things, it's very easy for me to kind of dissolve the bottom and keep breaking off the basement and finding there's no there. So I don't know.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, a lot of me hanging out with other Marxist nerds, doing a lot of amphetamine, just blowing through a lot of stuff and then coming up with nothing, That's been my political education.
Very Sartrean.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very Sartrean, yes.
I was more of a fan of Sartre than I was of Camus.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I feel like, who's better than both of them, but probably politically kind of more questionable, is Hesse.
I can see where you're coming from with
that.
I
mean? He's probably very fucked up. I just choose not to figure out what he felt politically, because it's probably proto-fascist bullshit. But I really like both Camus and Sartre. I like the navel gazing. I mean, I'm a young man. I like existentialism. Okay.
That's real.
But
I was more of a Hegelian when it came to like what was close to my heart. I always liked Hegel. Yeah, I was like Hegel and Eastern philosophy and things like that. That's where I moved towards more than anything else.
Schopenhauer, man.
I didn't dig Schopenhauer.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Oh my God.
To me, it's another
crazy.
Western invasion, Western reinterpretation of things.
Oh yeah, it's imperialist as fuck, but it's, I mean, if you're 19, a 19-year-old white male in this society who like isn't personally very successful or like clearly going to be, if you have to read Nietzsche and Schopenhauer, and I mean, my God. It finds you where you live, that's how you want to be.
I think I like Nietzsche a lot, actually.
Yeah.
I think he's probably the most overused philosopher without people understanding. And I don't mean like a sentence on the majority of people. I'm talking more about like meme culture.
Yeah.
And Facebook and things like that. I think.
I mean, I feel.
Go ahead. He was kind of the rock star philosopher, I think. and he's very appealing for that reason, because he was the Marilyn Manson of philosophy, which I did. You know, I do dig that. I think Marilyn Manson's kind of the musical equivalent of Nietzsche, actually.
Don't say that. Don't take Nietzsche away from me like that.
I do, though. I feel
like David Bowie is the Nietzsche of music. Or no, well, I got outside it. Lady Gaga. Lady Gaga is the Nietzsche of pop music.
Bowie would be, I think, Hegel. I really
that would break Bowie's heart. I'm gonna dig that motherfucker up and tell him what you said.
He was a zeitgeist follower. I mean, he was with the zeitgeist at all times. He had his finger on the pulse of it at all times musically.
I feel like emotionally, though, he had that Nietzsche thing where he clearly emotionally was so needy, but his main thing he would say is, like, he would try to press off, like, I just don't need people at all. But, like, deep down, you can tell Nietzsche was, like, so fucking lonely and heartbroken and just, like...
Well, it's so hard to tell the man from writing. That's always been the problem with
yeah.
You know, there's so many. It's even the same with the composers. You know, Bach gets this kind of credit for being this serious scholar, always serious and writing holy music all the time. When in all reality, he was actually a really jovial person who, you know, loved to party and had a shit ton of kids. He loved to fuck. So I mean, it's a very different kind of, you know, persona. And what philosopher was it that was like that? I can't remember who it was.
Schopenhauer was like that. Schopenhauer was a booze hound and quite the libidinal man. But yeah, I'm sure there are others.
Oh yeah, I mean, I want to say it's something like Kant or something like that. It was like one of those kind of very austere, deontological people.
That would surprise the shit out of me, because Kant was so scheduled and, you know,
Kant probably skinned.
It's the way he wrote. I feel like the way Kant wrote, you can tell he was shit in bed.
Oh yeah, and I think he skinned cats and shit like that probably too. Kant,
yeah.
I was more of a Jean-Jacques Rousseau fan, even though I can't subscribe to Rousseau's entirety.
Yeah.
But I liked him better. There's a knock at the door. Let me check on that real quick.
Ruh-roh.
Be right back.
This is the Deep Web Live podcast.
Okay, we're back.
Right on.
But yeah, so I mean, to me, yeah, I was always a Rousseau fan, but Kant, I don't know, man. I never dug his deontological ethics where he.
I've never read anything by Kant that even rose to the level of being interesting, or even like interesting to argue against. It's just
it's work. It is. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of dry work. Well, he essentially saw ethics and morals as something that you do because you should do. You know?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm really summarizing it, paraphrasing it, but to me,
well, we don't have 10 years, you know.
It's true.
Let's wrap up the Kant, you know.
But yeah, when it came to philosophers, I always liked Lao Tzu. I think he was probably my favorite. I think.
Really?
Yeah, the Tao Te Ching and Lao Tzu is my favorite philosophical treatise ever.
Tao Te Ching's badass. It's so, when I read it, I was expecting it to be like, all right, we get it. Like, you're just reading it because, yeah, it's too short to have not read it. You know what I mean? Right. But then you read it, and it's like, well, yeah, that's right. I mean, like, as a man of the West, when you read that, like, Taoism tracts, it's just like, well, yeah, I mean, I forgot not to do that. You know, like, you're right, Lao Tzu. It's just like, I want to get laid and do drugs and like party, and I want to be celebrated. I want to make art and then have people applaud, you know, like, as a Western person, that's all I know how to make meaning out of life. But then you read the Tao Te Ching, it's like, well, yeah, you're right. I mean, duh, you know.
Yeah, I think if I had to check a box, I would be a Taoist more than anything
Yeah,
else. I thought what was interesting about the Tao Te Ching was just that interesting time in history where he's still standing at the threshold of the pre-modern world, you know, where it's,
right.
you know, where he was saying wheels were technology. So it's
What a
fascinating to see
breakthrough!
exactly to see someone's perspective with that. I think he
Right,
wrote in poems, so it was kind of you know, it's flowery, and I think a lot of it is flowery in that respect. But I do think that somewhere Lao Tzu was rational enough to know that those things were required, and I
right.
think he just never wanted anyone to forget where humans came from, you know.
I
And that,
think,
go ahead.
huh? Yeah, I mean, I think as a poet, I also think that, yeah, poets are always trying to raise their art form to like mean more, you know, and be like the most important thing in human history. But but I do think that there is also something about the art of poetry, about putting words are the, and like our linguistic capacity is the basis for logical reasoning and for the like the dialogue, which is kind of, I've heard it put that Western philosophy is like in argument and dialogue, and that Eastern philosophy is based in silence. I think that's very wise, but that there's something about the poetic form hacks putting words together and like utilizing the association of language, but like kind of breaking the strictly logical use of it, um, and kind of um, yeah, transforming its purpose. And so I think in a weird way, whether he meant it or not, as a text, the Tao Te Ching is magnificent for that, because that's kind of, it helps by putting it in poetry. It helps you to not argue with what's being said. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. I think with the ideas he was trying to present, I think it's a very hard endeavor to write anything about it.
Or
So
I think if you truly believe in Taoism, it's hard to figure out why you need to write it down.
yeah, I mean, it's he contradicts himself even. You know, the Tao that can be named is not the true Tao.
Right.
The Tao that can be written about is not the true Tao. But I
It's
think
like
that's
that rap song, I Ain't Got No Type. Bad bitches is the only thing that I like. Well, clearly that's your type, Lao.
I think though contradiction and hypocrisy is a part of Taoism. I think it's an integral part of Taoism. I really do. You know, to me, I think you got to have a real logical reason why hypocrisy is wrong.
Right.
I mean, it's not
That's
across the board always wrong.
that's well put.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think in an argument, you know, you'd have to prove why that hypocrisy is incorrect in the first place.
Right.
Because a lot of times we get into this lock with that term and that idea where the second we find it, we're like witch hunters. And we're like,
Right.
ah, I found you. You're a hypocrite now. And it's like, yeah,
Right.
and so are you. But it's,
Right. I
you know
think
what I mean?
I think you're onto something too, because like there is this big part of human life that a lot of thinking doesn't encounter, which is like there's a lot of times where no, you should not do what you're about to do, but you kind of have to do the thing. Like a lot of times you make decisions which are not wise. They're not rational. They do not cohere to who you think of yourself as, or like they're gonna cause shame in you. But that's not who you are. You think you're that person who feels shame, or you're the person who, you know, is a Marxist or a Taoist. But that's not actually who you are. You know, like
No.
that. And so like you do a good job through your life of telling yourself you have these values, you're this kind of person and stuff, but let's get real here. Like you are a bunch of nucleic acids repeating itself, and there's no strict reason why I should stop calling, this mug me. There's no good reason for that, just like some sort of word game I make up. So it's like, what?
Well, I think it depends on the context, I think. I think that it depends on why you need to differentiate yourself from the cup or not. I think in a philosophical context, maybe not. I think that it's, I think that we're just multifaceted. We have egos, and that ego needs a definition. And it's strange to say that you have this part of yourself that needs definition, and there's nothing you can do about it. But it's
right.
true.
Yeah.
To some extent,
Just like part of yourself has to write down all the thoughts you had, even if you're a Taoist, and that is totally anathema to the thoughts that you have that you're writing down.
Yeah, I think past that, you're a bunch of things. You're a biological entity. You're this absurd entity, the Sartrean type of absurd.
But even these, though, are all word games. These are all.
Oh, sure. This
all comes down to that Saussurian difficulty of like, why does this word mean something? Is it, negative? Like, is it negatively defined? Is it like, what is it? And then this is why you shouldn't really read that much. Well,
I think, like I said, I think it all is in context. If we're in a debate, then we have to define things, and for that moment we have to suspend all mysticism and talk about whatever is relevant to the context. Right. If we aren't, then we can go back to the other game. But yeah, you're right. It's all words. In all reality, they're just words that we're using. They don't really have any meaning at all. I do subscribe, though, to the Robert Anton Wilson exercise of using the E prime, which is just English without the term is or to be or are.
I've not heard of this. Is embarrassing. I've never heard of this. I need to look this up. I'm gonna pull it up on my second screen and have it for when this is over.
Are you familiar with Robert Anton Wilson?
No.
You should check him out. He was just a writer, more of a musician.
Just a writer.
But he was a very fascinating.
Is that what his mom said? Oh, he's just a writer.
I think so.
He could have been a lawyer.
He could have been a doctor. But yeah, he was a writer for Playboy for a while. Then he was a freelance writer and wrote some seminal works. And was a big friend of do what?
Sorry, go on.
He was a friend of Timothy Leary, and he was a revolutionary type guy.
One of these.
Yeah. E prime is an exercise I use a lot where you can't say I am or you are. You have to say something like I suspect this is true, or I suspect this could be this, and I think it's a nice little fun exercise to do because it does, after a while, separate you from that term.
Right.
And you think slightly different, not revolutionarily different, but slightly different for a while that you use it. But yeah, I think you should definitely check out some Robert Anton Wilson. He's entertaining if anything else.
Hell yeah.
I'm interested.
Right on. I'll look that up. I like those kind of language exercises that they really adjust reality. They can help you kind of tease things.
Yeah, I go both ways with it. I see the need to let go of linguistic constructs and things like that. And actually, I'm very concerned with that idea intellectually in my life. But at the same time, I go the other way, and it does the same thing for your thinking. Also, to be very eloquent and to be very to the point and have your definitions very solid with things.
Right.
I think both are just as necessary, to be quite honest. I think
they're
both.
Yeah, I mean, they both, yeah, they're kind of the dynamic range of you. Like you can't live in either realm,
Right.
but you can visit, you know. But there's definitely the kind of they go hand in hand as far as active living, you know, conscious living and thinking.
Also makes you sort of a pariah.
Yeah, most things do. These days, most things.
Stuff kind of ostracizes you a little bit too.
If you put effort into anything and you don't, and it's not explicitly for money, then it's ostracizing nowadays.
It can be. It can be.
Dude, the amount of fucking Philistinism in this country, at least, I don't know about all other places, but like, the amount of people that'll be like, I don't watch movies that, you know, have subtitles, or like, I don't know, just like if anything requires a little, if it's an aesthetic experience, but it requires a little bit of effort, it's like, dude, I admit I can be a pretentious son of a bitch sometimes, but there is more anti-intellectualism and like snobbery of being anti-intellectual and like, well, I just like video games. And like I like action films.
There's a pride to it.
Yeah, there is. Nerds are the worst.
Yes, the internet. Look, the internet destroyed. The internet destroyed. It created so much, but it was like Shiva. It just destroyed a lot too.
Yeah.
and I always say this.
I am become death.
Exactly.
Creator of the Avengers movie franchise.
I've said this before in other podcasts, but it's like pro wrestling, which
my favorite thing.
I don't watch pro wrestling anymore, but I grew up on it, and I mean, I grew up on it heavy, like really heavy. I grew up in a good era for it too, and
Attitude Era or 80s?
Well, I grew up watching the '80s first, and I watched NWA and
that's Southern style.
But I loved NWA. That was my jam.
Dude, Flair and Funk.
Oh yeah, Flair was my favorite wrestler, and Arn Anderson was my first favorite wrestler. But the thing is that
Four Horsemen, man.
Exactly. But the problem is that when the internet came, people got too smart about it. They knew too much about it, and the mystique art form went away. And Go ahead.
I have such a theory about this. I just recently got the WWE Network again. I watched heavily. I grew up in the Attitude Era and the New Generation. I just got really hard back into it, and this is exact thing you're saying. I'm writing out an outline for a book about this, about how kayfabe. So for anyone listening who doesn't know, kayfabe is yeah, exactly. It's like the pretend world of the Undertaker is actually back from the dead, and these matches are real. It's a real sport, and Hulk Hogan actually is an incredible fighter. That's the kayfabe world, and that now they talk about, like you're saying, since the internet, people got so smart that now if you go on the WWE Network, most of it is out of kayfabe. They produce the majority of WWE content now is out of kayfabe. And
they can't do anything. They can't do anything else.
Right,
and people, the whole scene's dead.
Right, and people don't want to watch an hour-long interview with Stone Cold in kayfabe. Nowadays, people want to shoot interviews, which again, for listeners who are not listeners who do not know, shoot is what we used to call when wrestlers would talk out of kayfabe. So this is my theory, though, is that if you watch the WWE Network, the stuff they produce that is not in kayfabe is in this middle layer, because it is still produced. It's still fake, but it's fake, not fake. It's
inception of kayfabe. It's layers of it. Yeah.
That explains so well the false reality that we live in now with the internet, where so much is revealed, but it's revealed in this produced what do they call places websites? It's the Xbox Live thing. It's walled gardens where it's on the internet, but you can't like get out. But it's like it's that thing where you have amazing connectivity and information, but the discourse is still constructed in a way where any information that gets out, no matter how much WikiLeaks releases, it's going to be filtered through a discourse where it's like you think it's in shoot, but it's still in kayfabe in a way. It just uses shoot.
I really do think there was a moment in the 90s where really the ball was out of everyone's hands. I think that, and I'm talking corporately and everything, I don't believe in the absolute power or influence of corporocracies or corporatocracies or like that. I think there's points where they lose the ball. I think there's points where they fumble and people start to get, they get froggy. Like people start getting swirly, you know what I mean?
Right.
In the 90s, people were like, I don't want to see this shit anymore. I want to see something real. I want to see something real. And people are like, well, what do we do? How do we make this? And then it starts getting in baby steps. If you look at to me, I think wrestling is a perfect commentary on whatever's going on at the time.
It always is. Absolutely. Yeah.
Have to do. So, I think you look at the Attitude Era and it was exactly that. It was just, they want like middle fingers and shit. Like they want to be like real people.
Right.
So they had to get people to be real people again, but doing it in this kayfabe way. But I think it's linear, goes past that point, and then it curves down, and there's a downslope. That's when the ball's back in their hands. You know what I mean? That's when, okay, we got this system now. We figured out how to do this. Okay.
Right.
Bam. We know what you want. We know how you want it.
That's so true, but the popularity of wrestling, it goes up whenever you're talking about those fumbles. It goes up whenever there's a little danger and like they're running to catch up to, like if it's a football pass. They're running and they might not get it. But then once they get it and it's down, then it's not. The exciting thing is to see creatively an organization like that or an individual, if there's any like individual form that is relevant to this, but that reach and like the trying to catch up and moving in the direction of the needs of the audience.
Yeah, I think a lot of what happened was that's what happens when you don't have a lot of war.
Right.
It's all of a sudden you have times that people start becoming, start thinking. They start thinking for themselves. That's what's like to happen. People like, what do I want to do? Why do I feel any anxiety and fear? I want to do something. I want to see something different. I think that's what happened. It happened with a lot of art forms at the time too. And I think it was just a perfect storm of new technologies. And, when you have new technologies, you have people who are not filtered yet using them. And it's like, it's even like when Xbox Live and PlayStation came out with, doing the online stuff at first, the chat was like lively. It was different. And then after a while, it just turned into tropes and roles of people doing what they got to do.
Right.
And it's so sad. Well, I have to cut this short. I'm having some weird issues with my internet, so I'm going to have to reset it. But we should do this again with PZA as well and do a try.
Hell yeah.
So I think the next episode will be that. At least I'll be shooting for that. So we'll get everyone's time together and we'll figure out how to do this because it's been an amazing chat. And I'm really sad that I have to cut this short, actually. So
it's been fun.
Let's do this again.
All
right, everybody. This is the live from the Deep Web podcast. I had to remember. I promise everybody that I'll be back into form very soon once I have a nice regime going on. It's been real, and thank you for coming here in this podcast, and we hope to see you again soon.
Check out Persyn, SoundCloud.